Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have public comments period. Do we have any public speakers? Hearing, we have one. Murray, come on down. He's changed.
Most of you, I had a question. This is symbolic. This is about change and the way we think and we change. And I have a couple of questions about bridge and tunnel. Jim, both. Jim?
Jim.
Oh, wait. I need your attention. In the past, and Dave, in the past I've stood up here and complained a lot about things, and that's got to stop. I mean, it has stopped. I've changed. I can't stand up here and just talk about what you're doing, what I think I disagree with. I need to ask you to arrange a meeting with me, with your staff, to sit down and hammer some of this stuff out, to go over it and find out what the basis of it is and where it comes from. Now, last Monday at this time, I was at the Thruway Board meeting, and I realized that the new chairman that Governor Cuomo had appointed looks at things entirely different than they have in the past. I mean, there were 3 or 4 contracts that were put over because the chairman raised the question about what were the basis of these contracts? And I realized, and I got my 2 minutes at the end, and I met Tom Addison many years ago. I said, Tom, in the light of the way things are being done today, I'd like to meet with you and discuss some issues that I have about thruway operations. And on Thursday at 2:30, I'll be in Albany, and I'll be meeting with Tom and the chief engineer of the thruway. And we're going to set up parameters where I will be able to get information from staff in a way that was not possible. Well, I've always worked with the chief engineers pretty well. The governor has reinstated the Tappan Zee, and he's done it in a way that's quite correct. The last time it was done, I really opposed it because it wasn't done in a way that promoted transportation. Now, Governor Christie shut down the Arc Tunnel, and on the basis he shut it down was cost overruns. And it's true, but in fact it will be done. It needs to be done,
30 seconds, Murray.
But they're going to do the Tappan Zee first because you can see it. And it's also needed to be done infrastructure-wise. Now, there are a number of problems that I found that I would like to discuss with your staff. I can ask from now till the cows come home, and nothing's going to happen. You or Jim or Dave has to arrange these meetings for me.
Please.
Otherwise, they're not going to happen. So please arrange for me to meet with your staff and go over these issues until we can resolve them, because it's time.
All right, thank you, Murray. Okay. We have, first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from November of 2011. They're included in your book. I have a motion to approve. Second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second item is the committee work plan. Any changes to work plan?
No changes to the work plan.
Move the agenda. The third item on the agenda is the report on operations and safety, October 2011. Jim?
Okay, I'd like to start off by answering a question that was posed to me last month, and that was the cost of the marathon to the agency. It's approximately $64,000 in overtime was spent on the 2011 marathon, and approximately $330,000 of lost revenue, for a total cost approximately $400,000 to the agency. If there are no further questions on that issue, I would also like to report to the committee that the year is coming to a close, and our pilot program, Phase 1 Gateless at the Henry Hudson Bridge, is coming to an end, and we'd like to report our findings to the committee in February. If there are no questions on that, we will move forward with the report on operations. David?
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, or good afternoon. On page 13, our operations report begins in October. there were 24,121,000 crossings, which was a decrease of 1,349,000 over the prior October. For the month, rainfall totals were comparable to the prior year, except that a nor'easter storm struck the New York City area and the Northeast on October 29th with a mixture of snow and rain. During the storm and the following 3 days, traffic was down 300,000 crossings. During the month of October, the average price per gallon of gasoline was $3.66, which is 77 cents per gallon higher than the previous October, which is also the first month since March of 2011 that the year-to-year price of gas was less than $1 per gallon versus the prior year. During October, the Yom Kippur holiday fell, which was unlike in 2010. We estimate about 100,000 fewer vehicles crossed on the actual holiday. During October, we saw what appears to be a reduction in traffic that might be attributable to the Port Authority toll increase at 4 of our facilities where New Jersey customers tend to go, and those are the RFK, the Henry Hudson, the BBT, and the Verrazano Narrows. We're going to keep looking at it to see what the trend is like over the next couple of months and then report back as to whether or not there was what the total reduction might have been. And finally, B&T crossing charges, as you know, were higher than a year ago, so that also has an impact on travel in terms of how many crossings we have. Easy Pass crossings for the month were down 0.9%. Cash crossings were down 20% over this October versus the previous October. Passenger travel was down 5.5%, and trucks decreased by 3.1%. All facilities had fewer crossings versus last October, ranging from 3.8% lower at the major Manhattan crossings to 8.8% lower at the Henry Hudson Bridge. Year-to-date through October, there were 236.4 million crossings, which are 8.3 million fewer crossings than the comparable period a year ago. Finally, the traffic for November was estimated at 23.4 million crossings, which is 600,000 fewer crossings than November of 2010. Next month, we'll give you a more detailed, in-depth look at what happened in November. If you don't have any questions, I will turn it over to Andy Petrovich to go over the health and safety statistics for the month of October.
Any questions or comments? I would just note that I believe our toll increase went into effect January 1st.
December 30th.
December 30th. Okay, so in October to October would also reflect our toll increase as well as the Port Authority's.
Yes, but right. You're absolutely right.
Good afternoon. On page 26 and 27 are 4 charts and 4 graphs covering customer vehicle collisions and injury collisions and employee accident reports and lost time injuries through October of this year. And please note that the injury rate per million vehicles has remained at historically low levels, and that for the employees, there are 7 less lost time injuries than last year, with the frequency rate dropping 5.3%. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the Easy Pass performance report. Don?
Okay, thanks, Jim. The October Easy Pass report begins on page 29. Our Easy Pass market share was 80.6% during the month, which is 3.6% better than the year before, continuing our year-long trend. And every facility was again up from a year ago in terms of market share. More than 14,300 Easy Pass accounts were opened in October, bringing the year-to-date total to more than 149,000, about 16,000 more than a year ago at the same time. More than 4,800 on-the-go accounts were opened in October, about 1/3 of the total number of accounts opened. And these on-the-go sales continue to benefit from our new initiative to sell tags at the Henry Hudson, where more than 7,500 tags have been sold to date, including more than 1,200 in October alone. Overall, since the program began, the on-the-go program began, more than 140,000 of those tags have been sold, and about 76% have been registered. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the financial reports. If there's no further questions on the Easy Pass report.
I just want to jump in again. I should have grabbed it at the end of operations and safety, just if you guys could take a look at. On the Verrazano Bridge, you have these coupons for high occupancy vehicles, 3 or more people, and you make people go all the way to the right in order to use them, yet the high occupancy lane is all the way to the left, and then you've got a barrier in between, so you're making people go all the way to the right, and then they can't get back into the HOV lane all the way on the left, and if they do try to get it, it's a very unsafe maneuver. So if we could talk about that in the future. Thank you.
Okay, the financial report for October begins on page 35. I'm going to quickly skim over that and move ahead to the November forecast, 2011 November forecast, and 2012 final proposed budget. But just speaking quickly for October, total revenue was down about $3.7 million against the mid-year, primarily due to the October 29th nor'easter storm that Dave referenced. Total expenses were down against the mid-year, largely due to timing, and our support to mass transit was up about 5.6% better than planned. So let me move on. If there's no questions on October, let me move on to the November forecast and 2012 final proposed budget, which begins on page 49. There's a staff summary in the book. So let me just hit the highlights, that most of which are noted in the staff summary. We project total revenue by the end of 2011 of $1.498 billion and about $1.51 billion in 2012. The reason for this $12 million year-to-year increase is a weather adjustment, since we're not planning for the severe storms we had this year. Projected employment growth, and those are econometric statistics we get through headquarters and their consultants, and the leap year also will add revenue. Our non-labor costs are projected at about $167 million in 2011, about $180 million in 2012. The main reason for the year-to-year increase is that we delayed the purchase of EasyPass tags this year until a new lower price was in place, so we're buying many more tags in 2012 than we planned earlier this year. The increase in tag costs is almost $6 million, which is most of that increase. There's also increases due to just customer service center costs due to the higher EasyPass usage that we're seeing this year, and also power costs are going up through NYPA. Labor costs are projected to be about $213 million in 2011, about $20 million more, $234 million in 2012. The main reasons for the increases year to year are we are assuming fewer vacancies next year. We have a contractual increase for represented workers that account for part of that increase as well. Health and welfare increases are going up, as they are for all agencies, as well as pension increases. And that's the major reasons that you see the higher labor costs on a year-to-year basis. We project debt service about $205 million in 2011 and about $227 million in 2012. Our headcount is projected at 1663 in 2011 year-end. We're projecting a year-end headcount of 1639 in 2012, and that lower headcount is primarily the shifting of employees to the BSC in the last quarter of 2012. And overall, our support to mass transit, we're projecting now at approximately $900 million in 2011 and about $848 million in 2012. Also in the staff summary, we highlight some of our major initiatives that we're undertaking this year and into next year. The AET gateless pilot, of course, is nearing completion at the Henry Hudson. We're making a presentation to you early next year on the program that has been going on since January. We're continuing to expand our EasyPass on the go. We expect that based on the success of the Henry Hudson, we'll be selling the tags at all facilities by the middle of next year. We're also expanding our number of retailers throughout the region. We're continuing our tag replacement program, making sure that tags are replaced before they reach the end of their useful life, and really the battery expires and they're no longer valid, or no longer will work properly in the lanes. We are adding travel time information, additional BMS signs at several facilities, and also we'll be putting in a phone app for mobile devices during 2012. And finally, following along with the other MTA agencies really leading this effort, We'll be reducing our non-revenue fleet, saving about $2 million in 2012. We also highlight in the staff summary two additional cost savings that were sort of added to the major cost reductions we put in place in 2010 through our budget reduction program. We're lowering the lower easy task tag price is saving us against the July plan a significant amount of money, about $9.3 million in 2011. And despite the fact that we're buying significantly more tags in 2012 because of the shift, we'll be spending less money on tags in 2012 than we planned in July, almost $2 million less. We're also continuing a project we began in the budget reduction program, the elimination of a janitorial contract. We're bringing that work in-house, saving about $100,000 this year, about $400,000 in 2012, and all told, going back to 2010 when we started this initiative, we're saving about $2 million through that effort, bringing that contract in-house. And finally, although the staff summary does not specifically address the changes in the November plan from July, we just want to point out that in our 2011 support to mass transit, it's projected to increase from $882 million in the July plan to the approximately $900 million that I mentioned previously. Labor expenses are declining from July to November by about $4.2 million, and non-labor by about $12.6 million. So I think all in all, it's a pretty good news budget for us. And of course, at the Finance Committee following, you'll hear from an MTA perspective. So any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer.
This is just looking at your huge picture, this is just a trivial question. When you said there's an increase in the cost for customer service at the Easy Pass because of the increased usage of Easy Pass, so
Right.
one sort of offsets the other.
It's an account. The contract is account based. So if there are more accounts, then the cost of the contract go up. Does that make sense? And the contract we have to run our customer service center is
Based on how many?
based on how many accounts they have. So
Oh,
if the
okay.
accounts go up,
So
the cost goes up.
So it
with
is a true cost increase. Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, let me entertain a motion first to adopt. Okay, can I get a motion to move this to finance?
Moved.
Second? Okay, now we can have discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question is, and I have two. Will the move to gateless Easy Pass have a headcount effect? And is the success of that program reflected? Anticipating that the program will be a success, are those numbers reflected in these projections?
You have to remember that the gateless is first phase pilot. Second phase will be cashless. The assessment of that will be made at the end of the year. We don't want to project things such as labor reduction or operating costs based on the pilot. Assumptions can be made, but at this point, until we have looked at the metrics and made some assessments, I think it would be too far out in front to make a concrete statement that it will result in labor savings. Now, you have to remember that we have not hired in the agency for a period of time. So when you deduce the cost of salaries, the payout, naturally we're not paying out those salaries. So if that answers your question.
So you haven't hired, and I'm not sure I followed the last part.
We have not hired in a number of years. Assumptions and anticipation being what they are, we can assume that the cashless will be successful, but it would only be an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Just
What does the
to
logic
add to what
say?
Jim is saying, we're not reducing our headcount in the budget. We have been carrying some vacancies for some time, and so when you carry vacancies against a budgeted headcount, you see some actual savings.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, logic would seem to indicate that would be the result, I would think, and that that's why we're doing it, aside from the convenience factor. But I mean, just tell me whether you think it's logical or not.
I think the assumption is clear what you're making, and for us to be out front to state that there's going to be an operating savings or a labor saving, I think it's just presumptuous to talk about that at this time until we get all the metrics for the entire year, assess our needs, and I think we'll make those assumptions concrete once the metrics all come in at the end of the year.
Yeah. And just kind of pairing it up with the decline in traffic, those charts are not happy charts, and so somewhere that has to be offset if we're going to continue to have the support to mass transit that we're hoping to have. I just don't want to.
I can assure you, Commissioner. Yeah, I can assure you, Commissioner, that our efforts to reduce operating costs are ongoing, and what Don had apprised the committee is not something that was just done for the sake of a one-shot. We have a continuing effort and a plan in place to reduce operating costs so that our support to mass transit continues on the same plane that it's been.
That's great. The second thing, and is I raised this in another committee this morning, is since we are going for a revision to the capital budget in the CPRB, I note that B&T has taken a $374 million hit in this round, which is a big number, percentage-wise relative to the other agencies, and just wanted to ask you whether there were any casualties that of a significant proportion that arose from that, or is it just being sort of managed indefinitely over the next 5 years?
Our
Three years.
Our capital plan is very robust. Basically, we run it on a programmatic plan, a 20-year outlook. We do all the necessary work to keep our facilities in a state of good repair. I will let Don and Joe speak to that, but directly answering your question, no, there hasn't been a major hit on the capital program for bridges and tunnels. But as far as your question about the 374,
yes, most, if not all, of that target has already been achieved as a result of savings on some of the aggressive bids that we discussed last month. So there are no donor projects, so to speak, that have to be sacrificed in order to make this number. So we're quite confident we can still fulfill our obligations under the capital plan and do it at a lower cost.
Thank you. Donor projects. Note to self, remember that.
Thank you. Any other, Andrew?
So, to follow up on something Jim said, is the decline in support to mass transit for 2012 and some of the ensuing out years because of rising debt service, or you're anticipating lower revenues at the bridges and tunnels, or is it a combination of factors?
well, the decrease is primarily arises out of 1 year you have a total increase, the following year you don't. But there's also a programmatic plan to the budget in that there's always increasing costs to the operation. There's always increasing costs to pensions, health care, rises in salary, and I'm not talking about contract increases. I'm talking about incremental increases to the represented workforce.
So then what you said earlier about always looking for ways to streamline the operation obviously would result in somewhat better numbers in that area, if you're able to do that.
That is always the hope. There's no question about that, Commissioner. We've taken on a very aggressive plan over the last 2 years, working with Accenture and McKinsey in trying to find ways to reduce the operating costs of the agencies. And the re-engineering, although people might say it's a one-shot under my leadership, it is a continuing effort. And every department head that sits in front of you knows that and understands that, and we take every opportunity, and it might not come along this month, it might come along 6 months from now, but every opportunity to reduce our operating costs by finding these efficiencies, such as the tag replacement that Don was referring to, which resulted in many millions of dollars in savings.
Any other questions? On the question, the recommendation to the Finance Committee of the B&T budget, all in favor? Opposed?
We'll move on to the capital program. Joe?
Yes, good afternoon. The report on the capital program can be found on page 59 of the committee book. In November, we had just two relatively small commitments for $2.8 million. One was a force account for design management at RFK for the reconstruction of the Manhattan approaches of the RFK Bridge, and a $300,000 force account for construction support services for a structural steel repair project at the Henry Hudson Bridge. Year to date, we have 102 commitments made at an actual value of $338 million compared to planned year to date 101 commitments with a budgeted value of $621 million. Based on current status of remaining 2011 capital project procurements, we project approximately another $30 million of additional commitments will most likely be made in December, and that would bring our annual actual commitments to somewhere in the region of $370 million, again, versus a planned or budgeted $620 million. And that's about actual being about 60% of budgeted. As noted in the last committee meeting and in this prior discussion, the major part of that variance between actual and budgeted amount can be attributed to very favorable bid results that have been achieved on the projects listed on the first paragraph of page 59. For completions, project completions, we have already completed 4 projects this year with a total completed value of $94 million compared to a annual goal of 4 projects at $84 million. And year to date, we have $297 million of capital program closeouts achieved. There is one specific project that I just want to mention that I think is worthy of note. I'm happy to report that today the Bridges and Tunnels was able to reopen ahead of schedule the ramp from the southbound Harlem River Drive onto the RFK Bridge. This project, TB23, was completed from a design-build contract award in June 30th of this year with a very aggressive schedule that called for the ramp to be reopened by December 22nd with incentives to the design builder to achieve that, and in fact they exceeded that, and the ramp is reopened today. And I think we're very pleased. This has been a first application of the design-build method to infrastructure projects other than building and technology projects, and we're very pleased with the outcome, and also very pleased that the ramp has been reopened before the busy holiday season. So, thank you. It's an orthotropic deck. It's a steel deck where the normally a deck you have supporting steel members, stringers, and floor beams under the structural slab. In this case, the supporting steel is sort of all integrated into the deck plate itself. It's sort of a corrugated shaped deck, and because of its configuration, it's very structurally robust, and lightweight is the main benefit that it brings. I don't know if that answered your question without getting too technical.
Okay, we'll move on to procurement. Tony?
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. There are 10 procurements this month totaling about $16.4 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. All 10 procurements are competitive and are briefly summarized as follows. Starting on pages 76 and 77, there is a staff summary requesting the board to declare competitive bidding to be impractical and to authorize Bridges and Tunnels to enter into a competitive RFP process for design-build services for the TBTA maintenance facility on Randall's Island. The project budget is $19,100,000. Please turn back to page 73. Item 2 is a miscellaneous procurement contract with Vandis, Inc. to furnish and install F5 Local Traffic Manager hardware and software and provide associated support in the amount of $36,343. The next 3 items are included on pages 78 through 83. They are personal service contracts starting on page 78 with the joint venture of WSP Cells and HNTB, page 80, Hatchmont McDonald, New York, Inc., and page 82, Henningsen, Durham, and Richardson Architecture and Engineering, PC. For these procurements, each consultant will provide designs and design services during construction at the RFK Bridge, Queens Midtown Tunnel, and Marine Parkway Gil Hodges Memorial Bridge, respectively. The total amount of the 3 contracts is $14,426,544 for design services only. At a future date, the cost for design services during construction for each contract will be presented to the board for approval. On pages 74 and 75, there are 2 miscellaneous service contracts, items 6 and 7. The first is with Triport International AGER, Inc. to perform safety inspections, testing, and preventive maintenance for our aerial lift equipment. The second is a ride against a Long Island Railroad contract with Total Fire Protection, Inc. to provide inspection, testing, and recharging of fire extinguishers on an as-needed basis. The total amount of those 2 contracts is $150,763. The next 2 procurements are on pages 84 and 85. They are modifications to personal service contracts with Majeski and Masters, Inc. and Ammon & Whitney Consulting Engineers, PC, to provide additional design services at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge and additional construction management services at the Throgs Neck Bridge, respectively. The value of the 2 amendments is $491,218. The last item is on page 86, and it's a modification to a public work contract with Corcon, Inc. in the amount of $1,297,669 for additional work and deletion of various line items under contract D607 VN88, cleaning and painting of the lower towers at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. And this month, there are no ratifications. Unless you have any questions, this concludes my report.
Okay, let me ask for a motion to move the procurements all together. If there are any questions or we need to amend it, we can do that. But motion to move all the procurements.
I move the procurements be adopted.
Okay. Do I have a second? Discussion. Any amendments? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to address item 9 on the agenda. Materials describing the 9th item on the agenda was sent to the committee members on the separate cover. This is the proposal agreement leasing to National Grid the right to construct, operate, monitor, and maintain 2 natural gas pipelines in Bridge and Tunnel property adjacent to the Marine Parkway Bridge in Brooklyn under the Rockaway Inlet and on the Rockaway Peninsula in Queens. If there are any questions, we will take them at this time.
This is very important for the residents of Brooklyn and Queens, and you really knocked yourself out to do it, so congratulations to you. This is very vital to them.
Thank you, Mark.
have any issues, questions? No?
At this
A motion?
point, we'd like to ask the committee to recommend.
Okay, second? Second. Okay, no further discussion from anybody? All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.